All right. Peace and greetings, YouTubers. So welcome to another edition of In the News. Let's just jump right into it. Now, I have to start out with congrats to Mariah Carey, who currently has the #1 song in the country with All I Want for Christmas Is You. This is a big deal because the song came out 25 years ago, way back in 1994. And somehow this song has managed to stay relevant through all of the years and somehow find its way to the top of the charts 25 years later. And that's a pretty big deal. It just goes to show you that music can be timeless. And one of the other cool things about this song is that if it's able to stay at #1 for 2 weeks into 2020, Mariah Carey will be the only artist to have a #1 song in 4 different decades on the Hot 100, which is pretty cool. There have been artists who have done that with albums, but not necessarily singles. So Barbra Streisand has, I believe, 5 different #1 albums in 5 different decades. Janet Jackson, U2, and I want to say Madonna just did it recently. They have 4 #1 albums in 4 different decades. So, you know, there's a bunch of cool accolades that come with music, especially as you're in it for a long period of time. But going back to my main point, again, music can be really timeless when it connects with people and when it serves a purpose and when it does something that makes people feel euphoric. There's not really a shelf life for it. There are songs that can just somehow reemerge and somehow continue to remain relevant over the years. And I think that's one of the cool things about music. Like, it connects with people. And when you take out the politics and you take out sometimes even the imaging and you just let the song speak for itself, it connects with people. I'll always remember the first time I heard Michael Jackson Rock With You. I thought it was a brand new song. Mind you, it was like 1997. I was like 8 or 9. And I was like, oh, I thought it had came out that week. And my dad was like, boy, this song came out like in 79, 80. I was like, oh, okay, well, it sounded fresh. That's how music works. Another perfect example with Mariah Carey's bit as far as her song, you know, climbing to the charts 25 years later, climbing to the top, because that song, like I said, it would always kind of reemerge every year. So before the streaming and digital era, it would always reemerge around Christmas and kind of peak around the 40s and 50s. And then the digital era started and it charted a little higher, started hitting around the 20s, sometimes almost the teens. And then with streaming, last year it peaked at #3 and people thought she would have went to #1 last year, but she did it this year. I think of Chubby Checker. If you remember, and let's do a quick little history lesson here. Way back in the day, back in the 50s and the 60s, 1958, there was a song called The Twist that came out by another artist. And then Chubby Checker came out with his version of the song in 1960. And the song blows up. It's huge. He performs it on American Bandstand, which at the time was like the TRL in 106 in Park for the teenagers in the 50s and the 60s. The song blows up. It's huge, mainly because it also has a dance that's accompanied with it. And I mean, the teenagers eat this song alive. You want to talk about the whole pandemonium and that whole teenage fandom where you got the girls and stuff screaming. I always say it started around that era with him and that song. And so the song blows up. It goes to #1 in the fall of 1960. Guess what happens? The parents get a hold of the song. And this is the era where the parents finally loosen up a little bit and maybe they want to do more than the waltz. You know, they want to shake some hips too. And so the parents get a hold of the song. And the song blows up again. And the song goes back to #1 2 years later in January of 1962. I was like, isn't that pretty dope? Like, it's cool how a song can connect with people for various reasons. That would be like Old Town Road all of a sudden, you know, going back to #1 like 2 or 3 more years because our grandparents wanted to party to it. Like, that's pretty dope. And so, again, with music, it can be timeless. So, since Mariah has been able to pull this song from 25 years ago to the top of the charts, I think we should do the same for some other artists. By the way, can we also let Donny Hathaway's This Christmas go to #1? I'm just saying, you know, when I think of Christmas, there's 3 people I think of. I think of Mariah Carey, I think of Stevie for That's What Christmas Means to Me, and I always think of Donny Hathaway this Christmas. Plus, there's 850 versions of the song, so let his version go to #1. But the argument that I do want to make is there's been a bunch of artists who had songs that peaked at #2 and never quite made it to #1. And so I say, hey, if Mariah Carey can do it in 2019, these artists can do it in 2020. So these are the songs that I nominate to go to #1 in 2020. These are all songs that peaked at #2, so I say push them back to the edge, let them go to #1. So here's my list. Starting off with Jamie Foxx, Blame It. So this song came out back in 2008 and it was everywhere. It was huge. And the reason I would nominate this song to be #1 is because after this song came out, pretty much it influenced a lot of producers to kind of mimic that same production style. And there were a bunch of songs that came out that had a similar production vibe to it. Some of the songs I can think of, LaToya Luckett, when she came out with her sophomore album, she had a song called Regret with Ludacris that kind of mirrors the same production style of Blame It. SWV, they had a song called Better Than I, and I want to say it's on their I Missed This album that came out in 2010. That song has a very Blame It vibe. And even in gospel, Mary, Mary, God and Me. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I used to remix God and Me and mix Blame It together. I used to be like, it's the God in my alcohol. But I was singing about communion, all right? Don't judge. You know, because, you know, I was singing about just communion, you know, because, you know, in some churches, they actually put the wine in the actual glass. Now, a lot of black churches, they don't do that. You just get grape juice because that'd be too many people's uncles coming in there trying to get a shot. So, you know, I used to always mix all those. But so I nominate Blame It, okay? Blame It. Let's push that to number one. Another one, Missy Elliott, Work It. The reason this one is near and dear to my heart is because Work It set at number 2 for 10 weeks. 10 whole weeks. My fingers are all messed up today. I'm doing all the wrong numbers while I'm saying stuff. It's like if you ever remember Beyonce's Me, Myself, and I video. She's like, with your 3 kids in my home. I said, wrong, 3, Beyonce. But whatchamacallit? It set at number 2 for 10 weeks. Mainly because Eminem's Lose Yourself was so big from the 8 Mile soundtrack. Lose Yourself just never died. And so Work It, it just didn't get to number 1. It stayed at number 2. I know Missy had to be pissed. Missy was like, look, I lost some weight for y'all. I had bees on my face. Like Missy was, remember when she was with the turntable and the bees are just crawling on the face? Like she had bees on her face and everything like that. She had the little girl with the pigtails doing the breakdancing and everything like that. She somehow was able to get 3 female rappers in the same video shot or video shoot with no drama. Because remember, it was like Eve was in it, Trina was in it, Missy was in it, even had Tweet in the video. Justice for Work It. All right. Moving on. Oh, Brian McKnight, back at 1. I nominate this song mainly because when I think of 1999, that's one of the first songs that pop in my head. Brian McKnight, back at 1. TLC, No Scrubs. Blink-182, All the Small Things. Britney Spears, Baby One More Time. Ricky Martin, Living the Vida Loca. Those are the ones I always think of 1999. Oh, and Cash Money taking over for the 9-9 in the 2000s. Those are the 6 that I think of when I think of 1999. But the song never went to number 1. It was this really huge hit. And he even shot 2 videos for it. He was like, look, apparently y'all didn't like it when I shot the video when the plane crashed. So let me redo this and put on a little turtleneck sweaters and put some blue on and serenade the crowd for you all. He was like, look, I spent money for 2 videos. Y'all better push this to number 1. So listen, let's get back at number 1 to number 1 because it never went to number 1. So back at 1 to number 1. That's the goal for 2020. Oh, this is a good one here. Mary J. Blige, Not Gonna Cry. I nominate this song because all of your aunties were playing this when your uncle was doing her wrong or her boyfriend was doing y'all wrong. And when she would drive off in that Nissan Altima, that's what she was playing on the way out. And it's interesting because the only reason Not Gonna Cry never went to number 1 was because all of us were still going through One Sweet Day with Mariah and Boyz II Men. So I don't know. That was a weird time. Everybody must have just been going through something because there were a lot of sad songs that were topping the charts. So One Sweet Day had been number 1 for like the 16 weeks. And then Tony Rich, Nobody Knows It But Me was out. And it kind of, like, that song set in the top 5 with Mary J. Blige and Mariah as well, you know. And nobody knows it but me. Like, I don't know. People were just going through something. Hell, even the teenagers were going through. Monica's Before You Walk Out My Life was still a top 20 hit at the time. The teenagers was going through it. Somebody broke up with somebody at the homecoming dance. It was a lot. So I nominate Mary J. Blige. Plus, I think that's one of her best singles. That song, it's had a great shelf life. Nothing But a G Thing. Jeez, that I think that's probably one of the cult classics in hip hop, just a straight classic. Unfortunately, it never went to number 1 because there was an artist named Snow. And if you remember, he had that song Informer. The Informer. I don't know what he said because he said like a million words a minute. But I said, I don't know the words, but he sang like a million words a minute. And it was like this song that was like dancehall and reggae inspired. He was from like Canada, but somehow that was number 1 over Dr. Dre. Because, of course, the masses got a hold of it. So, Nothing But a G Thing never quite made it to the top. And with honorable mention, I would also nominate Janet's Rhythm Nation video. Or the song. Mainly because of everything she went through just to get the video done. And also, when I think of imaging, I think a lot of times when people think of somebody like Janet Jackson, the first image that comes to mind is Janet with like the militant suit and the hat and the earring with the key in it and everything. I say Justice for Rhythm Nation. It stalled at number 2. And mind you, on that album, she had like 4 number 1 singles, 7 top 5 hits from that album. So, I mean, it's not like she had other songs. Missy Much and all them other songs topped the charts. But I still say Justice for Rhythm Nation for the video alone. Plus, it took them like 19, 20 days to shoot it. She passed out doing the video because they did a 25-hour day and a half one time, and she was dehydrated or something. So, Justice for Rhythm Nation. Anyway, back to the main point because I went so far off the grid here. Congrats to Mariah. I think it's really, really dope. So good luck to her. Hopefully other artists can somehow be able to also find, a lane at the top of the charts, especially the artists who are older. Because, in this industry, the industry will age you out after like 35, especially if you're a woman entertainer. The male rappers get a little bit of extra time. They can round it up to 40, but with the women entertainers, if you're not already established by 30, it's so hard to really climb the charts after 35 for some reason. But to each his own. Anyway, moving on. Now, this story I'm excited about. This is just the nerd in me jumping out. If you remember, I always talk about the show on the channel all the time, but Legends of the Hidden Temple is making a comeback. Which, if you did not know, this was one of my favorite shows growing up to watch on Nickelodeon. Mainly because it was kind of like a history trivia show meets like Gladiators. I thought it was the dopest show in the world. And so apparently there's a service called Quibi. I guess this is another streaming service. First of all, side note, there's too many streaming services. I can't keep up with all of them because now I guess it's Quibi, you got Netflix, you got Hulu, you got Amazon Prime, you got Disney Plus. BET has theirs, CBS is launching one, NBC is launching one, HBO has theirs, Stars has theirs. I'm like, look, I don't have that kind of time to be trying to buy all these different services because there's not any way to have all of these in just one anymore. Like, to be honest, we might as well just all go back to cable. And if the cable companies were smart, they should drop all of their prices down like 60%. Stop having people pay $829 for 12 channels and some slow internet and a landline that we didn't ask for. Like, if the cable companies were smart, they would drop their prices way down and try their best to include everything. But, of course, with licensing and all these companies pulling their stuff, I don't know how this is going to work. So we will see what happens to the future of entertainment when it comes to television. But anyway, going back to my main point. So Legends of the Hidden Temple, I don't know if it's going to be for adults or if it's for kids. But I tell you this, if it's for adults, I'm signing up. My younger brother's going to have to go on the show with me or something, and it's going to be on. Like, I don't know if you remember the show, but pretty much this was like the show for like, how do I word this? This was the show for the kids that had a lot of brains. So, but these were also the kids that sometimes weren't as physically active. These weren't the kids you were going to see on Guts. Where on Guts they were climbing the big mountain and jumping out of stuff and everything. And hell, I don't even think you see these kids on Double Dare. Even Double Dare was a little too physically active for these kids. So this was the show for the kids that the brains did all the speaking. And so the kids would do all the trivia in the beginning. But then the way that they would set these kids up is after they've answered all these questions and done all this great history, it's like, nope, now you got to do an obstacle course. And so they would go through this obstacle course, and that would be the part that would be triggering because, when you're a kid and you're watching these game shows, you want everybody to win. You always want them to win if they make it to the obstacle course. And so they'd always have the first kid go. First kid somewhat does okay. They're not the most athletic person, but they're doing all right. And they'd be running through the obstacle course, and then out of nowhere, there's that big old tree that would just grab and hug them, and they'd have to give up a medallion. And then if they got caught by another tree or some kind of random person that would just jump out, then they'd have to stop, and the other sibling would have to go and do this obstacle course. And this is where the show got real. This is where the thievery and the trickery came in. Because, of course, this is the sibling that is not in the same physical shape as the sibling that started the race. This is the sibling that's knock-kneed. They got asthma. They even got scoliosis, so they can't even climb the rope. I'm like, dang, man, come on, man. And then they would never win. Like, they'd always lose because the clock ran out of time, and it was like 4 seconds on the clock. They just had to make it 3 steps. All they had to do was leap, but they were tired. They were running and jogging, and then that time would end, they would not win. Like, that show used to stress me out. Oh. But I love that show so much. So I think it's really cool that it's coming back. I'm serious. If that show really is for adults, I'm signing up. And I'll bring my little brother. Now, me and him, I have to work the deal out because I think I'm smarter than him, but he's more physically fit than I am. So I'll just answer all the questions, and then he does obstacle course. And if he somehow messes it up, I think I'm in decent enough shape to finish it. So, Legends of the Hidden Temple. I will be watching and supporting. And then apparently Tekashi 6ix9ine is being released from prison for time served, or at least that's what's being reported. We'll find out in a few days when we see him either still in the cell or see him on the street, but I doubt we'll see him on the streets. I'm sure he's going to lay very, very low, and I hope his whole family, I hope all of them are laying real low, like Barry White's voice low, like your bank account after you go Christmas shopping low. Like, it needs to be low like that because apparently from what has been reported and what people have been saying, like he done went and told on all these different people. And so of course you kind of know how that system works. People come back after you. So he gonna have to go somewhere far. He gonna have to go to Australia or something, like, because nobody's gonna fly 20 hours all the way over there to chase nobody. And we've seen different elements of rage that people have, but a 20-hour flight from, I think it's like 15 hours from LA, but let's just say he's on the East Coast, so he gonna have to go to LA first. That's at least 20 hours of flying. Nobody has that kind of patience to chase after somebody for that distance. The only person I can think of might be that astronaut lady. Remember the woman? She was an astronaut, and she drove 950 miles to go, and apparently she was going to kidnap what she thought was her boyfriend. And so that story was crazy because she put on this astronaut diaper. First of all, I didn't even realize astronauts wore diapers, but then I thought like, well, yeah, if they're in space, it's not like everything would stay in the toilet bowl. So, okay, I get it. So she put on like one of the little astronaut diapers and she drove 950 miles. She said she's not even stopping. She was just going to sit in it. All right. And so she apparently tried to kidnap the guy, but it didn't really work out. And then she got arrested and charged for like assault and battery and attempted kidnapping. And I think she had like $15,000 bail to pay. I don't know the end result of that case, but that's the only element of rage I can think of where somebody just went above and beyond to go after somebody. But Tekashi, we'll see where that goes. Again, I think the lesson to be learned in that is please do not try to market and promote a certain lifestyle that you don't really live. And then you try to jump into something that isn't really who you are, and then you get caught up in a bunch of nonsense. That's the lesson to be learned from that. Like, man, because I just feel like when you're an entertainer, if you get the opportunity to go and do something you love, like music, and you get paid for it, and people follow you and pay to see your shows and buy your merchandise, then why are you getting yourself caught up in a bunch of stuff that is, it's not a necessary action anymore, depending on what your experience is in life. You've been given an opportunity to better yourself and make sure that your family can eat for the rest of their lives, and then you want to get caught up in some foolishness. Now look what you got to go through now. Now, he's going to be wearing disguises and everything. If he got kids and everything, when they go to school, he can't go to the kids' band recital because everybody going to know who he is. He's going to have to change some colors out that hair, too. He's going to have to do something. He's going to have to look real low-key. Anyway, we'll see what happens with him. And then did you all see that clip of The View with Meghan and Whoopi? Let's just go to the clip.
I'm talking about the people that are the senators that are in the Senate. The Republican Senate.
Here's what's happening now. We're gonna keep, girl, please stop talking. Please stop talking right now. Because you know what?
No
what's
problem.
happening? Thank you. Thank you.
I won't talk the rest of the show. No
okay, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. If you're going to behave like this,
I'm not behaving like anything. I'm trying to show a conservative perspective.
Yes, we understand that. But what you're doing.
No, I'm not.
We're not doing anything. How about this? Former FBI. We'll be right back.
I'm not even gonna lie. I was tickled watching this clip, mainly because it's about time somebody really told Meghan just to chill. Like, yo, Meghan is irritating watching that show because she's always mad. Meghan is mad every single day. Every time I see that show, she pissed off about something. She always sitting there tight-faced. Like, she's more madder than, like, when your mom comes home from the grocery store. I don't know if you had a childhood like mine, but for some reason, whenever my mom came home from work with a car full of groceries, for some reason, me and my brother just knew it was World War III at the house. She was going to come in the house with attitude, pissed off about everything, and you better not ask her what's for dinner, because that'll really set her off. And we just knew to stay out of the way. So we would just put the groceries up and then go all the way to the other side of the house. Everybody go to their distant corners, mind their business. It's just something about going to work in the grocery store and coming home to kids. It's just a bad combination. But goodness, Meghan just pissed off every day. Like, I didn't even know you could look mean with red lipstick on. I thought red lipstick was supposed to make you look glamorous. You're supposed to look like Dorothy Dandridge or Diana Ross or Marilyn Monroe or some crap. She looks like she wanted to speak to the manager because the water was too warm. I don't know. Like, what the heck? Goodness, she just has this really nasty attitude. And I think the thing about it is, it's not even anything to do more so with her politics, because there's other women on that show who have similar viewpoints. But those women are at least likable. So you can at least sit there long enough to hear what they're saying without being turned off by their attitudes. And so she just has this nasty, pissy attitude. And then, of course, when everybody doesn't kiss her behind, she checks out for the rest of the show. It got me when she was like, I just won't say anything else the rest of the show. And Whoopi's like, okay, I love that. Like, dang. But literally, because she does that every episode that I've seen. Like, if she doesn't get her way, then she sits there, arms folded, pissed off. She won't say nothing the rest of the show. And it's like, okay, we get that you're mad, but you can't center the entire show around your emotions because you feel that you weren't heard, and now you're going to have a little hissy fit about it. Like, goodness, jeez. Man, and then she don't have a personality on top of that either. And the thing about it is, like, she gets to be rude and nasty all day, and they're not going to fire her because she brings the ratings. Like, if she leaves The View, it will be because she decided to leave. She brings the ratings. They need somebody in there that can keep the table shaking. And so she brings in I bet you she's one of the highest paid on the show, too. I bet you. I don't know if she's paid more than Whoopi or the Joy Lady, but I feel like she gets a good check because she's getting some ratings for that show. So they're going to let her sit there and do all those crazy antics. And the funny contrast to that is, you saw Gabrielle Union, who on the other spectrum more so was raising concerns about things like some of the racist, statements and things that may have been said behind closed doors, or things that were sexist, or just things that are more so an HR issue. And you see they got her up out of there real quick. They had to remind her, like, listen, you don't get those privileges. You out of here. Goodbye. And everything like that. But Meghan gets to literally do, something to the other end of the spectrum that's a little bit more insufferable, where it's just like you're irritating to be around. And, she get to be there comfortable. Interesting, right? And she just ain't got no personality. She's just bland. It's like, I feel like she's bland, like eating flour out of the bag. Self-rising, just eating some flour. Like that's what she gives me. Just no personality, no sense of humor, always mad about something. Just mad every day. Goodness, that ain't good for your blood pressure, Meghan. Do something about that. Anyway, moving on. All right, switching gears here. For those of you who are in the DMV, the 18th annual HBCU College Fair is taking place on January 25th. If you're from this area, you know that it's a pretty big ordeal. It's put on by the Alfred Street Baptist Church every year, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger. This year, it's at the Gaylord Hotel over at National Harbor. The event is going to run from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., and I'd say this is a great opportunity for those of you who have teenagers that have college aspirations, or even if you just have teenagers who are trying to figure out what's next after high school. This is the perfect thing to take them to, just to even let them get their feet wet. I'd say anybody from 9th grade onwards, bring them in there. But for those who are seniors, and even those who are juniors, I definitely say that your kid should bring some kind of portfolio. Bring like a folder with all of their accolades in it. So transcripts, letters of recommendation. If they got a letter for sports, like the Letterman's jacket, bring that in there. Certificates, awards, anything that makes them stand out, because they, like I said, they have on-site admissions for some of the schools. I've taken some of my teenagers there that I work with over the past few years, and some of them have gotten into colleges while they attended this event. And so it's a great opportunity. Now, like I said, it's from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Don't show up at no 2:52 trying to get on-site admission, because at this point they've already taken the people they probably want. And then the earlier you get there, I think the better, just because they start to run out of pamphlets and stuff, because so many people keep going. Like, it's thousands and thousands of people. But it's a really great event. Definitely take your kids there. I would definitely say bring them there. Me, from speaking from personal experience, I'd never even heard of an HBCU coming out of Washington State until they had one in Seattle, and I had a friend that invited me to one, and the rest is history. But I would definitely say bring your teenagers to this event. So again, this is on January 25th. Registration is already open, because you do need to register in order to go, from what I understand. And then they also have music auditions. So for those who want to audition for like the marching band, I believe, and everything like that, or the fine arts programs, they have auditions for that as well. So just have all of your stuff together. Definitely check out the website, see what the requirements are. And from what I understand, every HBCU in the country is represented at this event. So definitely check it out. This next story is actually very triggering. I don't know if you've seen this story, but it's the story about the school resource officer that randomly picks up and slams this student like twice. I don't know if you've seen the clip. You guys can actually go look up the clip. Like I said, on this channel, I don't like to post things that are too traumatic when it comes to like the black experience. So you're never going to see me posting the clip of the police shooting a black dude or anything like that, or black people getting beat up by police. That's just not my thing. So in this clip, it's at a middle school, and when you see the actual camera footage, there's a kid that's walking, and next to him is the school resource officer. And for some reason, the school resource officer just picks up this kid, like just slams him into the ground like some WWE mess. And I mean slams the boy hard. Like, even though the video has no sound, you can feel him hitting the ground. That's how hard he slams the kid. Then he picks the kid up again and does it a second time, just to reiterate whatever it was he was trying to prove. Then he drags the kid, and then you see him dragging the kid until he's out of the shot of the camera. I don't know the origins of what that's about, but from what I've read at this point, that officer's been fired. But I can't even find a possible justification for why that even took place. Like, it makes absolutely no sense, because with a lot of these kids, it's almost like practice for the real world. You go to school and you get harassed by the school resource officer, and then you become an adult and go in the real world, and now you got to deal with the police doing the same thing. And for some of these kids, depending on how grown they look, they're already 12 or 13 and being harassed by police. But I just think it's very disturbing to watch. All I'll say is, if this was my child, I'd be rich. I'd own that whole school district, the school I to, the resource officer, whatever company he represents. Everybody's getting sued. Everybody. Suing everybody. All right? Ridiculous. I just don't see the justification for that at all. And I think they have to really start doing an evaluation of some of these people who are working with children, because you're starting to see an influx of people who really just aren't in a space to work around kids, because kids drive them crazy and it pulls out the worst in them. And I know kids are irritating. They're hard-headed. They don't listen. That boy probably was running his mouth and everything, but that still doesn't give you justification to do what you did to that kid specifically. You know what I mean? If you look at the clip, I'm just like, are you trying to kill the kid? Because it's like this hard, the school hallways are usually like the hard tile and everything. I'm like, you could have broke that kid's shoulder, anything. Come on, man. Like, all for what? And a lot of times it's ego and pride. Like, when I saw that whole slamming bit, that just looked like some ego and pride being crushed. And because he had to prove a point, and he already started, he just had to go ahead and finish it. Like, that's the vibe I got. Very disturbing. Very disturbing. This very last story that I want to talk about, it's a bit disturbing, but it's something I don't think we should run from. It's something you have to tackle head on, especially because it's something that's affecting our community as a collective. And that's pretty much the mental well-being of black youth. A New York Times report came out and revealed that suicide attempts and the suicide rates amongst black youth has skyrocketed. Meanwhile, when you're talking about white youth, it's dropped like 7%. But amongst black youth, between the years of 1991 and 2017, it skyrocketed by 73%. And then it gets more scary when you break it down by gender. Boys ages 13 to 19, the suicide rate jumped up 60%. And when you get over to young black girls of the same age range, it skyrocketed 182%. I really don't even know where to start with that, because that's a lot to take in. Because, for years, the conversation was always, oh, that's not something black folks do. We don't do nothing like that. That's, that was always kind of the narrative that's been there. And I think what that did was, there were people who always had problems, but we always suppressed it. We always brushed it under the rug, or you needed to pray away whatever you're going through, or black folks don't deal with that, black folks don't do therapy, this, that, and the third. And it goes to show that there's a need and there's a void that needs to be filled amongst a lot of the youth. And so what I was reading, they were talking about some of the factors that can possibly lead into people, going into suicide. And these were socioeconomic factors. And the interesting bit with the socioeconomic factors is, it's not just kids who happen to live in neighborhoods that are less affluent. It's also kids that are black kids that live in the suburbs as well. And I think how that ties into it is more so identity of self and understanding who they are, depending on what kind of suburb they live in. If they're like in a situation where they're the speck of pepper in a bowl of salt, and they're the only one in their neighborhood and the only one in their class who comes from their background, shares their culture, shares their experience, sometimes they have a hard time fitting in. Especially when you talk about wherever it is that they live geographically, because there are certain states as well where the suicide rates are higher. Like even the state that I'm from, Washington State, when I was a teenager, it had the second highest suicide rate in the country, right behind Alaska, which was number one. And the theory behind that was because both states are a little bit more secluded from the rest of the country. And if you're not somebody who has your career together, you're not somebody who has a lot of opportunity, or things don't look super, super great, you almost feel like you're stuck. And so people just choose to no longer, they don't want to live. Things just aren't really, looking good for them. And then they said weather patterns. A place like Washington State, where it's always overcast skies, it's always gray all the time, even that can contribute to how people feel about different things, as far as people's disposition, as far as even the dopamine that's released, as far as people to feel good, or those endorphins that make people feel good about themselves. But some of the other factors, trauma, depression, anxiety, unemployment played a role. And then also emotional risk factors. So the idea of hopelessness and despair. So clearly our kids are going through a lot of different things, and I think it's really important that we don't ignore what it is. And I also want to say that social media plays a huge role in this, because we're living in the era where people validate themselves by the opinions of others. And that's always been society as a whole. But it's different because now you have social media and everything is more direct and more people have access to you. You know what I mean? Like if you're somebody who, especially say you're a bigger person on social media, I don't know, you got 50,000 followers on Instagram or something like that. You upload a picture of yourself. And of course, there's going to be people who are like, oh, you look great, you look nice. But then you're going to get that wave of people who say, oh, you look terrible, this, that, and third. Or if you're somebody who's not publicly liked by the masses, you're constantly a target. And with this group of teenagers and this group of younger kids, they validate themselves through the lens of social media. This is the first generation of kids who've grown up where social media was their status quo. At least with my generation, social media came out later down the line when we were teenagers. So even though I think we still fall into that same pool of the Generation Z kids, or even the younger end of millennials, at least we still had those early years before social media was a thing, where we were able to develop coping skills, or able to develop, certain social skills that may not necessarily be as prevalent with kids today, who are 100% building their entire element of self-esteem around what's on social media. When you're talking about filters and the imaging and the airbrushing and the photoshopping and the Facetune and this, that, and the third. And when you're talking about the girls, 182%, I would really like, I don't even know if the research is really complete to really dig into why, but I think there's so many conversations to be had. It's because something is going on with our young black girls. Something's going on with our young black boys as well. But when you look at the fact that with the young black girls, it's triple the rate of the boys. Something is going on. And so I don't even know what to tell you. For me, because I work with kids, it just makes me want to reevaluate how I go about doing my day. Because the biggest hurt I could ever have is if something were to happen to one of those kids under my watch and I didn't see the signs. It would eat me alive. But I definitely think it's important, again, like for those of you who have children, to pay attention to them, acknowledge their presence, acknowledge their feelings, check in with them. You know, I know some parents, you work so much. Some of you work 2 and 3 jobs. Some of you really don't even get a lot of time to be with your kids. Some of you literally just have enough time to put food on the table. And then you're working because it's just life. You know, life hits a lot of people in various different ways. But you got to find ways to really make sure your kids are good. And I always say it's okay for black people to go to therapy. It's okay to see a therapist. Some people are so afraid of everybody being all in their business. You got to look past that, because at the end of the day, your mental health and the mental health of your children, it's more than what other people say about you, or it's more than your ego, or it's more than your pride, or it's more than how you want to see yourself. And in reality, or in the end, you have to face the reality of what is and really do what's best for you and your family. So I've always been an advocate for like family therapy. I always think I think it's a great thing. But I just think the kids deal with so much. And then with this generation of kids, they've seen so much more, in my opinion, especially when they talked about the idea of trauma. Think of the fact that for kids who've grown up in this era, for the last few years, they've seen so many black men and black women shot and killed by unarmed police. They've seen so many very traumatic images. The world's a little bit more desensitized to trauma, in comparison to 20 and 30 years ago. You're more likely to see certain things in the news and in media and things that you may not have necessarily seen 30 years ago. I mean, the same thing has still been happening, but it's more prevalent. It's in your face. Instagram, when a kid makes a Twitter account, they see everything. When they make an Instagram account, they can see everything. They're seeing the same things that adults are seeing. They're being exposed to some things that maybe they don't have the mental capacity to understand and make sense of yet, but they're exposed to all of that. And so again, I think there's so much that's going on with the kids, and I think sometimes we're not paying attention. And so I think it's really important to really find ways to make sure your kids have a sense of purpose. And I even blame schools with that as well. Even I think things like cutting arts and cutting music and all that crap, stuff like that's important too, because kids need, that space to really find things that make them happy. Even with the schools cutting recess, you can't keep locking kids in a classroom for 8 hours and expecting them to sit down and be quiet all day and their minds aren't stimulated. And then, they're graded by all these standardized tests, and they're told that if they don't pass this standardized test, they're not going to graduate from high school. But they don't really have the tools to equip them to pass the test. Like, they have so much on their plate. So much. So that's a conversation to have. Anyway, share your 2 cents. I'm going to come back and follow up on this story. I'm going to do my own little research. And I think we'll do a live video and go a little bit more in depth, because I want to talk about this a bit more. But we'll get to it in a different video. Anyway, share your 2 cents. I'm out. Subscribe.
Cause they act up, call back up, and all the girls are macked up. The DJ spins the record and the lines begin to stack up. Take a step into another deeper dimension, while you balance out the moments that you give your attention. Say, well, you such an actor, taking pictures faster, seeking validation from the ones you used to laugh at. Wait, here's a question that they never really ask us. If you had $1 million, would you spend it on your passions? We're working 9 to death and trying to catch up on our rest. And if you wanna be the best, they claim you have to ace a test. Then we diss a wizard check. Why you blowing up my text? I don't work on Saturdays. See, my life is not your deaths, and that's the reason why I choose life.